So this chapter is about operations management because we spoke so much about, say, all the functions of management. We also discussed organization structure, culture, leadership, plenty of things that we discussed in this course. It also makes sense that we talk about operations management because operations are such a key for the success of any company. And once you know how you need to manage your operations and the way you actually take in inputs, combine those inputs, process those inputs, either create products through manufacturing or you create services that you might want to offer customers. So that's the output that you're generating. And how do you generate value? That's the key. If you're a business and you don't know how to generate value, when I pay X dollars to you and buy a product or buy a service from you, do I feel that I get some value? Do I feel that I've invested my money in the right place? I've spent my money in the right place? Or is it just that, I go back home disappointed because the quality is not great, the performance does not meet my expectations, the kind of service is terrible. If that is the case, me as a customer, I'm not going to talk great things about your business, about your products and services. I'll just tell, go somewhere else, find another alternative brand because they are better off. They say something and they actually deliver that. So it's very important that you generate value for customers because they pay X number of dollars to buy your product or to buy your service. You got to generate that extra value, and the more the value, the better it is because you attract new customers to your product or to your service. And the key is to retain those customers. It's not just they came, they bought your service, they bought your product. The key is to keep them. If you have a new version of the product, you have a new model of the product coming up next year, they might want to upgrade to that new version of the product. If you have an extra service, and they might want to spend that extra amount of dollars to upgrade to add that extra service. So that's the key of retaining existing customers, and value is also key to attracting new customers. Unless you create enough value, you're not going to have the customer base that is essential to generate the kind of revenue that supports your operations, that supports your manufacturing, that supports your innovation, that supports R&D. So you generate value, you attract new customers, you retain old customers, and in the process, you generate revenues, you generate enough money to cover your expenses, to cover your costs, and to cover the cost of innovation, continuously innovating. You cover all these costs and you have a surplus, which we call profits. And we want to make profits which are not just marginal profits, very little trivial profits. We want above average profits. So the key is to generate value, make sure you have enough customers coming back to you, and you continue to attract new customers. You generate value, which other companies cannot do as good as you. And in the process, you're increasing your presence either by increasing your market share, increasing the customer base, expanding to other regions and countries. And in the process, you're able to generate above average profits. But the key also is to remember in operations, you want to control cost. You don't want to do activities that do not add value. And you do not want to, keep doing those activities which are escalating the cost, which are increasing the cost of actually manufacturing a product, or which are simply adding no extra value. So look at your operations, identify activities which you want to keep, identify activities that make your product or service distinguishable, differentiated. You want to keep those activities. You might want to look at activities which simply add to the cost, which are redundant, which do not add extra value. You want to replace them with something that is value adding. Or you might want to eliminate certain activities that are of no consequence, that are of no value anymore. You might want to incorporate better technologies, replacing certain redundant activities in ways that add value, quality, durability, performance, extra features. flexibility. There could be many things, many attributes of a product, many attributes of a service. So whatever your company is doing, if I'm manufacturing a laptop, that's a product. But if I'm offering education, that's a service. So if you go to, say, a hotel, they give you a service. You consume their service. You consume hospitality. So basically, you could be a service organization. You could be a manufacturing organization. The key is to look at your operations, keep those activities that add value, that make you differentiated, preeminent. It shows that you're an expert. You do things better than competitors. And you want to also make sure that you eliminate those activities which are no longer value adding. So I tried to explain the whole, chapter in a summarized fashion, even before I started rolling out the slides, just to say how important it is that you focus on operations. If you get your operations wrong, you don't control costs, you're doing activities which are redundant, you do not have control on the quality of the inputs, you do not have control on the manufacturing process, and you do not have control on the quality of the output, meaning which you're no longer relevant in the market space. You're not creating products or services that are considered valuable, and you're in trouble. Eventually, you will figure out there are several competitors which do things better than you. You just got stuck in the past and you're thinking that's going to save you. It's not, because there are companies which are thinking out of the box, thinking ahead of their times. They're focused on those activities in the operations, in the value chain itself, and making sure that they're on top of the game. So that's the key. Any questions just to the introduction? Okay, let's dive in and find out more about operations management. So the learning objectives for today's class is we're trying to define operations management and explain its role. I tried doing that already, but maybe there are points that are there in the slide which will get me talking again. Define the nature and purpose of the value chain. I said the value chain, you have the inputs, you have the manufacturing or the transformation process, and out of which comes an output in a finished product or a great service that we have to offer. So that's the simple value chain description, and describe how value chain management is done. Every activity in the value chain is extremely important. It should add value, should make our product or service differentiated, and it should be better off than our competitors. What they do, we do something better than them. We give high quality product, better features, more durability, more reliability, better ergonomics. It can be many things. And so we'll discuss that as well. And then we'll also go to contemporary issues in managing operations, because managing operations, even if it's a coffee shop, you might have a great coffee shop to begin with, but if you're not on top of your value chain or your operations, you might struggle to keep the business going. You will not be sustainable. So if you want to be sustainable in the long term and you don't want your business going south, you got to be on top of your operations. So I think I explained what operations management is. It's about looking at how you operate on a daily basis. Who are your suppliers? What are the inputs that you need to procure? What do you do with those inputs or components or raw material? What processes will shape your final product? Once you have the final product, what quality standards will you comply with? How do you make sure you're giving the best quality? How do you control quality? How do you make sure you're not compromising on safety and quality issues? And make sure that when you serve quality, you have a better chance of attracting new customers and retaining the old ones. So that process is what we call as operations. Operations have primary level activities. And there are support activities, which we'll come to in the next few slides. So this is the operation system. So what are the inputs that we have? I was focusing so much on material, but there are plenty of other inputs: people, technologies, capital. We need money, equipment. If you have outdated equipment, it's not going to help. You need to have the latest technologies to maintain efficiencies, to maintain quality, to make it error-free, to reduce wastage. You need technology. You need the current equipment. You need money to do that business, and you need skilled people, motivated people. And you also need access to the best resources. Imagine if I don't have access to the components and the raw material, I'm in trouble. How do I get high quality product if I'm using cheap materials? Information is a huge source. So where is the demand? Where are my customers? Where are future prospects? What are the opportunities out there? We need information of our own strengths as a company. We need to know our weaknesses. We need to have information about our competition and what they're up to, their strategies. And then we need to figure out what opportunities we have, what threats are possible. The proper SWOT analysis is always helpful. I'm not saying information will help you take all decisions. It's again your experience, it's your ability as a manager, as a leader to lead the organization in the right direction. But all these inputs are essential. What's the transformation process? So when you bring in capital, when you bring in technology, you buy material, you use equipment, you use the information. So what do you do with all that? So do you produce great laptops? Do you produce great software? Do you produce great applications? Do you provide great hospitality? Do you serve great food? Or do you serve great coffee? What do you do? So what's the transformation process? Students come in, we work on the students and build wholesome personalities. It's not just we overload you with information. We want to build skills, we want to build competences. Not just that, we want to build personalities. We want to create great leaders. We want to create responsible citizens. We want to make people who care for communities, who care for the planet and people around them. And we want to make sure that they're able to generate employment for others, that they're productive. They use their skills for not just their upliftment. They also do things that are good for the larger community. So that's the transformation process. If you ask me, what should educational institutions do? We create the skills, we impart knowledge, we create competences, we build confidence in young minds, we create leaders, we create people with a sense of self-efficacy, who are responsible, who can lead, who can work with diverse cultures, who can take up challenges, who can resolve problems, not just for their company, problems that are confronted by communities and by the society at large. We want to create that kind of future for the planet's sake. So that's the transformation process. People like me and the rest of the faculty and universities like New York Tech are interested in. And what are the outputs? That's what exactly I said. We have leaders, we have people who can work in diverse teams, who are innovative, who get great solutions for problems that at the workplace, for organizations, for communities that they serve, for countries that they belong to. We want that kind of students. Those are our outputs. But if it's a laptop manufacturing company or a mobile manufacturing company, a car manufacturing company, they produce goods. Or we create services like education, hospitality. It could be anything. So outputs can be goods, outputs could be services. This is exactly what we said: service firms versus manufacturing firms. Manufacturing organizations produce physical goods such as cars or food or whatever, and service firms produce non-physical outputs in the form of services such as medical, transportation, as I said, hospitality, education, and all these are services. By the way, countries like India, for example, 60% of the GDP of India as a country are based on service. Opposite is true for China. China is so much into manufacturing. If you see, I don't know how much a percentage of the world's manufacturing happens in China. Literally every product that you can touch and feel and use is literally manufactured in China. So very contrasting economies between India and China. China is so far ahead in terms of manufacturing. India is very, very involved and engaged in service industry, like the IT industry, the software industry, the back-end operations, the support industry for insurance companies, for medical companies, for stock brokerage companies, financial institutions. Plenty of the back-end operations happen from India. Now again, not just India, Nigeria, Vietnam, Thailand, there are other hubs like Taiwan. All these countries are coming into the service sector because they have great engineers, they have got strong educational system, they produce plenty of highly skilled engineers to help in the service industry. So is the case with the United States. They are into manufacturing, they are into service, And current trends from the administration in the US is to bring back as much production back to the US because they need to generate as much employment. And that's a policy that countries keep changing, whether they want to have more focus on manufacturing or whether they continue to have more focus in service industry, whatever suits their country. So that's the difference between what a service firm is and what a manufacturing firm is. Any questions till now? Now, the key, goal for any kind of operations management effort is to improve productivity. Now, it's strange, on this slide it says people plus operations variables. I would simply put a simpler definition that we are all aware of. Productivity is effectiveness and efficiency put together. We want to do the right thing, that is being effective, and we want to do it really good. Use as little resources as possible. We do not make errors, we do not create waste, and that means we are efficient. One, we do the right thing, which is being effective. We do it really well, which means we are efficient. So effectiveness, efficiency put together, that's what we define as productivity in management terms. But you can also define productivity as people working with all the operations variables, which includes what we just discussed, other inputs, the transformation processes. Who operates all these things? It's people. So if you can get people to do the, work with all those inputs and to work with all the transformational processes really well, we can ensure that we are optimally utilizing the resources, including human assets, raw material, the financial investments that we make. These are put to the best use. Deming, improving managers' productivity. Deming actually had a lot of principles in terms of ensuring how we, select our suppliers, how we ensure high quality inputs, how do we make sure that we train our managers properly, we impart the right set of skills, that they take the right decisions, and then we have the right technologies and equipment in the manufacturing process, that we control quality at every level, and that we make sure that we are having the right distribution networks. We make sure that we use the most optimal, transportation means, and once the product is sold to a customer, also to making sure that we give great service. Once we sold the product to a customer, we need to come back and say, do you need extra service for installation, for maintenance, for replacements, for warranties and stuff like that. So it's a bunch of things that you could do to make sure that we are integrating people into all the operations that we do in an organization while improving productivity. And all of these are important. And operations management and a company strategy, why are they to be discussed at the same level? Is because operations management is such an important thing in ensuring that the organization is able to implement strategy and keep up their position in terms of global leadership. If we have a position, how do we maintain that position? Great companies like Apple or Tencent or Alibaba, all these big companies continue to focus on operations. It's just not about the strategy and vision and the goals and expansion plans that they might have. How do they improve efficiencies all the time in their operations? Great companies like Amazon, for example, very strong operations. Otherwise, they'll fall apart. Same applies to Alibaba. If they're into finance, if they're into B2B, they do so many other things like venture capital and stuff like that. It's because they can keep tab on their operations. It fits in really well with, say, Alibaba's overall strategy and vision. So operations is such an integral aspect. I cannot emphasize more. Even if you have a small company, a startup company, a little coffee shop, you must have to make sure it's just not about the vision and mission and great values that you have and the lofty goals that you want to achieve short term versus long term. It's very important that you focus on operations because it ties up really well into that strategy. It ties up how you can achieve that vision and the goals that you set for yourself. It's extremely crucial. So we go off to this. So why is operations management important? I think I explained to you. Then the second learning objective here is looking at value chain. I think we discussed a little. We want to create value. In the beginning of the class, I did give you a little pep talk on how important it is to create value. Anywhere you go, see, value is a relative term. If you go to Dubai, you find Armani coffee shop. I don't know if you have even heard of Armani having a coffee shop. So it's pretty strange of what might be value. So I just put that on your chat. It's beautiful the way Armani coffee shop looks like, and the expensive layout which is there, and the kind of array of coffees that are available there. Again, super expensive. Just the experience of it. It's just not about simply coffee and the taste of coffee, but the overall experience that you get in going to Armani Cafe and having a coffee there. So value is such a relative term. You might think, why do I spend so many dollars just for a coffee? You're right. Maybe for you it is not much value, but for people who have tons of money, for them going there and having coffee has a value. So
Yeah,
value is a pretty relative term, right?
I think it's like the social status.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hmm.
We know, see, the difference is we know the price of everything, but we don't know the value of things, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah. I paid $4,000, sir, for taking this course. You know the price of it. But if you also know the value of it, you know what? $4,000, that is not the money I spent on all my education from grade one to my PhD. It didn't cost me $4,000. So for me, $4,000 is a lot of money. Do you get that value? You should read, you should invest, you should ask questions, you should attend every class. You want more from your professor, because for me, $4,000 is a lot. It's not about the price. I value my time, I value every penny. That's how, I grew up thinking that it's difficult and you need to be grateful for everything that you have and you cannot take anything for granted, because I know the value. Time, more than anything, your time. This 1 year will never come back to you. This last 2 years that you spent already at New York Tech in your bachelor's program will never come back to you. Never, ever. You need to make it count. That's value. So value is such a relative term. I don't want to sound philosophic here, but we are simply talking business. So value, as Wei was saying, it's pretty relative. It's so much to do with the status and how you look at it. So we can go ahead. So the value chain, there's this description of supply, processes, customers, operations. These are the key buzzwords which will pop up whenever you look for a word cloud regarding value chain. All these things that we will discuss. We need excellence. We need to be preeminent, distinguishable, differentiated. We need to add value. So these are all things. You see diamond there, that's Porter's diamond. You're not going to get there because this is not a strategy class. But if you are a business major, you will end up, the last course for you in bachelor's is what we call as business policy and strategy capstone, busy 435. I teach that course as well. That is where we'll talk about Michael Porter's five forces model, Porter's diamond framework for countries and their advantages. There are many things. So this is just a word cloud that you can possibly generate when you discuss anything, any research related to value chain. It's a nice representation of how important value chain is. And the fact that value chain is appearing so big means that everybody's interested, from the top management, middle level management, supervisors, engineers, technical staff, the workers. Everybody is interested in the value chain. The more efficient, the more profits, better for all. You have better incentives, continuity of work, job security. It has strong implications. Goals of value chain management, again, you want to add value, attract new customers, retain the old ones, be differentiated, do things better than your competition. And of course, at the end of the day, you have satisfied customers, you have a larger customer base, you have a better presence across the globe. Eventually, you want above average profits, right? Benefits of value chain, some more. You have quality, service, satisfaction. You don't want dissatisfied customers going and talking terrible things about you. The word of mouth publicity should stay positive. So a satisfied customer is an asset. He's going to be, he or she is going to be an advocate. They will talk great things about you. You're not paying them, but they will give you great testimonials. They'll write great stuff on their blog pages. So all these things are assets for your organization in attracting new customers and keeping the customers you already have. So describe how value chain management is done. We'll go here. So the value chain management process is dynamic. It's because you're dealing with environments which are continuously changing. And that means you have to come up with new solutions. How technology changes will affect your value chain. Definitely. Equipment, manufacturing, whatever you do, how artificial intelligence can change your value chain process, how data analytics can change your value chain process, how more skilled people, multi-skilled people can change your value chain process, how the pandemic can change your business formats and the value chain that you had before, and what kind of changes you had to do for your value chain. You can simply say, I followed this value chain process 10 years ago. It's going to work for me today. No, even our teaching has changed. We go to Canvas, you'll see people on Zoom, we have synchronous teaching, asynchronous teaching, hybrid modes, virtual classrooms, completely online. Teachers' jobs have changed, students' requirements and expectations have changed. The flexibility has increased. More resources are available, bite-sized chunks of education. You don't have to take everything together. We might have modules that you can pick and choose what you want to take. Everything has changed, including the education system. And the pandemic actually made things faster. If there were companies that were slow to changing, the pandemic simply pushed every company to change. So it means you need to work on your operations. It means you have to go back and revisit your value chain and say, is it still relevant? Do we need to incorporate new technologies? Do we need more artificial intelligence? Do we need more virtual scenarios to make our customers happy? How do we get customers buy more of our stuff and consume more of our services? And how maybe customers' lifestyles have changed, their needs have changed because of the pandemic. They don't travel much, they're confined to their homes. What kind of stuff should you give so that it makes it more convenient for them? That adjustments are much more easier to do because I have value additions for them. You see an opportunity here. And I think several companies have seen opportunities of how, because of what the pandemic has done, how can they actually serve customers better and their changing needs better. Successful value chain management, there are many things which support the value chain. But now the value chain has inputs, which we discussed, people, finances, technologies, equipment, and raw material and stuff like that. Those are the inputs. Then you have the process, the transformational processes, and then you have the outputs. That's the value chain. What supports the value chain? So your value chain is supported by the culture and attitudes of a company. Are we quick, fast to adapt? Do we see an opportunity here, or do we say, oh man, the pandemic, we cannot survive this? And what's our culture? Do we embrace change? Do we embrace innovation? Do we embrace risk-taking? So culture and attitudes is extremely important. Coordination and collaboration. Maybe we require better ways of coordinating. Can we not leverage technology to coordinate better? And we don't travel to physical locations as much as we used to. So how do we improve coordination and collaboration? Technology investment. I think every organization has invested more in technology because of the pandemic. You cannot get lesser. It has to become stronger. Every great company has worked in AI and data analytics and business intelligence. Power BI. I've seen educational institutions use Power BI big time, just to see how the flow of students is happening, how recruitment is happening, how do we track and trace their satisfaction, what other services should we do to retain our students or our customers. So investments in technology is massive. Organizational processes have to be looked into. What's the planning process? What's the communication process? Imagine if you have bureaucracies that are stopping us from changing. Your value chain is going to hurt. Your operations are going to hurt. So you have to look at organizational processes. And those are very supportive. If you have supportive organizational processes, your value chain strategy will work. Of course, leadership. So you look at, say, I can go back to Alibaba as an example. 50, 60 years ago, to create an organization of the size of Alibaba would have taken a long, long time. But Alibaba happened very quickly. It's because of great leadership. And it's also because they were able to leverage technology and the vision, the ability to see opportunities which other companies were slow, and to integrate so many things under one company called Alibaba. So these are opportunities that happen because of leadership. And there's no going back. You need employees who are fast at adapting, who are skilled, who are willing to change, and who are willing to leverage technology, who are willing to have the positive attitude, who are also great at coordinating and synergizing. It's all because of employees. Leadership is true, but you need smart people. And that's where countries like, say, China have done so well. It's because there are, the population there, the Chinese people have been strong with their skills, and they're fast at their efficiencies. They're quick learners. They're willing to explore opportunities. They think outside the box, and they know the hundreds and thousands of opportunities that, the Chinese economy presents, and they're willing to leverage those opportunities. So you need employees who are capable, and you need to continue to train them how to use the latest technologies so that they're relevant and they can do future jobs really well. So all these requirements, these are supportive things in support of what your value chain strategy should be achieving. So the value chain is clear, but how do you support that value chain strategy? It is through these things. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's pretty much covers most of the important things. So organizational process, each of that, we're discussing one after the other. We'll go with organizational processes. Yeah, here is it. This is the first one, which we'll discuss in the next slide. So better demand forecasting. Can we forecast demand? Select functions done collaboratively with other partners in the chain. These are such important things. Collaborations. If you look at how Huawei, for example, has collaborated with Leica, for example, all the camera modules and Huawei phones have the Leica collaboration. Leica is a German company. Leica is also called the Rolls-Royce of camera manufacturing, that you have, brands that you have. So Huawei is smart at collaborating with Leica for their cameras. And the camera functionality of Huawei phones is so good because of their collaboration with Leica. This is an organizational process. So Huawei is not saying we're good in everything, but we want technology collaborations with a German company. We want technology collaborations with other great companies across the globe. That's an organizational process and leadership. So I can give you a lot of examples of how Chinese companies have used those opportunities to collaborate with other European companies or Asian companies in creating better products and better services that are as good as Apple and that are better than maybe Apple and Samsung. We don't have to go back to Apple and Samsung always, because these Chinese manufacturing companies have done amazingly well, and they've done it faster and quicker because of organizational process and leadership, which also is in support of the kind of collaboration that they bring with other partners in the value chain itself. New measures needed for evaluating performance of various activities in the value chain. You have those various activities in the value chain. How do you measure? How do you monitor? What value is being added in each of those activities? You don't want to do those activities which add no value. And there are new methods of measuring that. You have dashboards, you can watch the processes real time, and you know how much time is being consumed, how much raw material is being consumed, what value additions are there. All these great companies, strong companies, global companies in the Fortune 500 list, they have very close tabs on the production process, raw material procurement, the quality control, the packaging, the extra services, the after sale services, the accessories that they give, making sure you're getting an entire ecosystem, not just a mere hardware. It's the hardware, the software, the ecosystem, and the investments that you make, emotional investments that you make in a particular brand. Once you're invested in that particular brand, because it's an entire ecosystem, you just don't want to get away from it. Even if you have the money, you don't want to leave this brand because it's so integrated so well. And Apple does that really well. If you're already into Apple, for example, you have an iPhone, you have a MacBook, you have an iPad Pro, then you have Apple TV, you have Apple Pay, it's your life starts off and rolls around Apple. That's what they do. Employee and human resource. There's this, I like this picture about Whole Foods. I don't know, flexible job design. The example I cannot give of Whole Foods, I can give you flexible job design, that of Google. So it's extremely flexible. Effective hiring process. If you happen to apply to, say, Amazon, the hiring process is so long, extended, comprehensive. They have 3 rounds of technical interviews. They have 2 rounds of HR interviews. They have another 2 rounds of other kinds of interviews. It's just like 6, 7 interviews that you might have to face, testing your technical skills, human skills, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, team building skills. And then they do hundreds of background check. They run background checks on your criminal records, on your financial status and defaults that you might have had, the fines and whatever you must have paid, and all the cases that might have registered against you in terms of workplace harassment and all kinds of offenses. They have a complete. They run that reference check beyond that 7 or 8 rounds of interviews. So effective hiring process is in support or whatever your value chain strategy is intended to be achieving. Ongoing training, the more you invest in your human capital, the better it is for you because technology changes, jobs keep changing. And obviously it means the skill sets have to change, the competences have to change, which also tells you that you need to train yourself and update your skill levels and your domain expertise. And that's why, guys, when you're enrolled into a bachelor's program like this, it's a great first step, but don't ever think, bachelor's is enough. You might want to do a master's, you want to do other certifications, other, certificate courses that you might want to think way beyond. Just don't be confined to thinking management 1 or 2. Let me take it one semester at a time. Let me chill and relax. This is the perfect time to plan next 5 years, next 6 years. I'm not necessarily trying to tell you whatever you plan is going to happen, but it's better than not having any plan. If you plan and achieve 80% of your plan, I'm telling you, you would be extremely successful. You don't have a plan and you drift, you're asking for trouble. Maybe you will be lucky. I'm not saying if you don't plan, you might not succeed. You might still succeed, but you got to be fortunate and your prayers must be very strong. I didn't plan too much. And if I reached all the way to the United States, I think it's my faith and those good things, that those prayers of my parents and everybody that has brought me here. I don't think it's proper planning. It's not skills. It's not training. All that I taught in this class, nah, I didn't do that. I just was brutally honest to what I did. I was passionate about what I was doing in class, and plenty of prayers from everybody who cares for me, their blessings and God's grace. That's it. So, employees and human resources, extremely important in support of your value chain strategy. Obstacles. There are plenty of obstacles that can slow down or reduce or diminish the efficiencies of your value chain itself or of your operations. Organizational barriers like bureaucracies. Sometimes decision making can take time, communication can take time, going back and forth can take time. Cultural attitudes. You have an organization that is sluggish, that is so resistant to change, that's not willing to take some kind of risk, that's not willing to tolerate any kind of outside the box thinking, that is not in support of innovation. Such companies, the culture is a massive barrier. If you talk about Google again as an example, Google's culture, organizational culture, is so strong in support of innovation. No idea is discounted. Whatever level, whichever employee is willing to come up and give an idea, share an approach, or share some change in strategy, it's taken seriously because they value employees and they value their own employees' ideas and suggestions and perspectives. It's culture, strong positive attitude, very shared strong culture is a massive asset to value chain. And the opposite is true. Weak culture, debilitating negative kind of attitudes, these are obstacles to value chain management. People can be assets, people can sometimes be obstacles. It's sad that I have to say that, but sometimes you have those people who can block and any kind of innovations in the value chain activities. Required capabilities. If your company does not have the required competences, or over the years you have not built R&D, you have not created those technologies in-house, how many things can you buy from outside? If you don't have the finances that you can procure those kind of technologies. So finance can be a capability, technology can be a capability, smart people, R&D can be a capability, access to different patents can be a capability that you have, proprietary technologies that you've created, strong capabilities, great distribution networks, capability, strong goodwill and brand image, capabilities. These are all assets that you want to have. Having none of these is an obstacle. Your operations are going to suffer. Barriers, let's go and talk about them. Refusal, reluctance to share information. As I said, communication. If you don't have enough communication, bureaucracies, reluctance to break up the status quo. We don't want to go out of our comfort zone sometimes. Security issues, these all can be barriers. Cultural attitudes, trust, control, too much of control, barrier. Lack of trust can be a barrier. Coordination, collaboration, configuration that satisfies customers and suppliers, education of internal, external partners, they're limiting only to some capabilities. You need capabilities that I just mentioned, R&D, technology, proprietary technologies that you're creating. Capabilities can be goodwill, brand image, plenty of things that involves customers and suppliers. People, you need people who are committed, who can invest time, talent, and treasure. And that's what we want from people. And the energies. If you don't have that kind of engagement from your people, how are you going to have those technologies and equipment and other resources work for you? So very important. I go off to the last one, I guess. This is discussing the contemporary issues that we might face in managing operations. Technology, we spoke so much about it. And New York Tech is a technology university. Guys, School of Management focuses plenty on technology. We use, all kinds of softwares. Say Bloomberg, we have Bloomberg terminals, which are useful for getting information about every possible listed company out there, whether they're listed in New York Stock Exchange or Abu Dhabi Stock Exchange, they're listed across the globe, you know, and NASDAQ or anywhere. You can get access to information on all industries, different sectors, different regions, and the syntax that you can type in, it can give you announcements, it can give you fundamental analysis, plenty of technical analysis inputs, past data, plenty of things you can do with using Bloomberg terminals that the School of Management has. It's a paid software that we use. Every terminal, I think there's $25,000 annual fee that we pay. And we have several terminals, Bloomberg terminals. Just I'm giving you one example of technology. We have a business incubator, which is part of our Center of Excellence for Entrepreneurial Studies. So in Manhattan, because of the locational advantage, we bring in venture capitalists, we bring in financial institutions, plenty of other individuals who are interested in startup companies. All of them come together to share ideas, to get the kind of support, to do the necessary documentation, to access kind of opportunities in creating new startups. So I'm giving another option of what the School of Management does in the form of a business incubator. Likewise, in courses that we teach, we embed SPSS, which is a great tool from IBM for analyzing data, for doing surveys, for doing market analysis, for figuring out how your employees might react to certain things that are going on in the company. And based on that kind of analysis, it supports decision making. So we use SPSS from IBM in our courses because data is important. How do we analyze data? What kind of causality can be determined between two variables? And if we determine a causality between variables, how can we actually improve the effect of, say, job satisfaction, employee satisfaction? Or if we are doing a survey on customers, how do we improve customer satisfaction? If you're doing some studies on consumer behavior, how do we change consumer perceptions, for example? And how do we do that? We collect data, we do surveys, we actually use published data sometimes, databases which are available in public domain, but we use SPSS from IBM to do the analysis. Likewise, I can give examples. We use Tableau, we use R, we have faculty who teach Python programming, plenty of visualization kind of tools. For operations productions management, we use software called OM, operations management softwares. So technology, I can't tell you, imagine a school like School of Management uses so many technology tools. You can imagine technology being used by industry, whether it's for manufacturing or whether it's for service industry. The use of technology is very important. And then quality initiatives. I'm sure you appreciate quality is an extremely important thing. So we need to monitor quality objectively. And then we have total quality management, ISO 9000 certification, we have Six Sigma, and there are plenty of other things. And then project management. We'll go over each of those in the next few slides. So what is quality? So for if it's a product, how do we measure quality? Performance, features, flexibility, durability of the product itself, conformance to certain standards. Can we service a particular product easily? Aesthetics, how does the product look like, feel, the ergonomics, perceived quality? How do we assess quality in terms of how consumers perceive quality? All these are important attributes or dimensions of product quality when it's a tangible product that's being manufactured. But if it's a service like hospitality, education, then what is it? Timeliness, courtesy, consistency, convenience, completeness, accuracy. I mean, this is coming out of one research. There might be other service quality dimensions from other research. But this is not a bad list of looking at how do we measure service quality, timeliness, courtesy, consistency. Think about it when you went to a hotel, or think about it when you went to a restaurant, and timeliness, courtesy, consistency, convenience, completeness, accuracy. This is what you're looking for, right? So, this is how we measure quality if it is a service like hospitality, tourism, airline industry. It could be transport, it could be all these things. You're looking at this. So, as I just mentioned, ISO 9000 is an international organization for standardization. They have a list of ISO 9000 series of certifications, right from review of documents, filing, product design, product quality. All these kind of things have separate certification, and this is done by the International Organization for Standardization. And they have series of certifications, one for filing, one for documentation, one for design of a particular product, another thing for actual product features and dimensions. So there is certification for everything. And it's done by the International Organization for Standardization. Once you establish a company, you're sure of your quality standards, you can call them in, they will do an audit, and they will certify every process, including documentation. And it's a quality mark that you want to have, saying we are ISO 9000 certified, whichever series. You have 9100 series, 9200 series. There are plenty of certifications that are available depending on what kind of business you're doing. Now, Six Sigma is also used by manufacturing companies. It translates to roughly around 3.4 defects per million. Suppose you produce a million products, the maximum defects that you can have is 3.4, which is extremely stringent. The normal distribution curve that you have, the variance is being measured between what's the upper limit and the lower limit, and what's permissible in terms of variation in quality, and what's not accepted and will be called as a error or a defect. So how many defects are Six Sigma equal to? Well, just as little as 3.4 defects per million. But you might ask me, how can we maintain that kind of quality? Imagine you go to a hospital, they did a million surgeries, 3.4 did not work because of some errors from the doctors or lack of quality procedures. You could be one of those 3.4. That's why service industry, they don't use Six Sigma that easily, because it's extremely difficult. But in manufacturing, they use it. They want to minimize it to almost zero. The bell curve never actually hits the x-axis. It's just not possible to have perfection in life or in manufacturing, in technology, in everything. There's no way you're going. Elon Musk with his SpaceX program had several of his rockets, explode. So you can imagine there are errors with whatever NASA, the space launches, which Russia launches, or countries like China or France. They've had failures. So with extremely expensive kind of investments, high-tech industries like space technology, errors happen. You cannot make it zero. But if you go as low as 3.4 defects per million, that speaks to stringent quality control. In manufacturing, it's much more doable, much more possible than in the service industry. Then we go off to another topic called project management. This is what many companies do. They pull together a temporary team and have a project manager. And then we have members of the team from engineering, from marketing, from sales, from finance, from accounting, from information systems, from HR. All these people work as one team to get a job done because that's a project. Once the project is done, and it's easier to monitor the process elements, the operations that are going on, have a close tab on the quality of the product. You're servicing a particular client, you customize the product or service to the customer's requirements because it's a very specific project. And we have support from all the departments working with the project manager to service your client and to the utmost of his satisfaction. Once that's done within a specific budget, that particular product has been delivered, or that particular service or software has been delivered, this particular project management team is dissolved. It doesn't exist. You might become part of another project team under another project manager perhaps. So project management is used to great effect, especially if you want to customize, say, either software solutions or customize a product, a complete product, and you want to install it, debug it, run it, and make sure it keeps running at the same, that's possible if you have that kind of project management teams. We're moving off to the technical side of operations management. I will not go too much into it because this course doesn't really require you to get there. But Gantt charts are used. Whenever you're doing activities in your operations, you might want to look at what are the activities that we do. These are the activities that we perform. And how much time does it take in months? If you say 1, 2, 3, 4 months, and on the x-axis, if it's the time period that's listed out on the x-axis, on the vertical y-axis, we have the activities that are listed. The two colors which are here are actual progress, which is in green, and the blue color, the dark blue color, the navy blue color, which is here, is the goals which we set for ourselves. So copy, edit, and manuscript, the goal should be first month, and it can happen independently. And what was achieved is in green. So most of it was achieved in the first month. That's what it means. Design sample pages. If you're creating a manuscript of a book or something, the second activity, it can happen midway through the first month, after 15 days perhaps. The goal is to have it finished by the end of the second month. How much of progress was made is in green. Most of it was done. Draw artwork. If there are some pictures, the cover design, some color pictures inside of the book itself that we are trying to make. When can that start? This is again an example. It doesn't have to be like this. So this can also simultaneously start along with design sample pages, maybe after the first 15 days, and it should finish at least a week before the end of the second month. This particular case, they are able to achieve most of it. Review first pages, the review is taking more time. Apparently the goal was to finish by the end of the third month. How much was achieved? Only this much has been achieved. There is still more to be done. Maybe it's going to cause delays. If you don't finish a job, if the green does not match the blue, that means there are delays in certain activities, which means there will be a delay in completion of the project time itself. Print final pages, it should be done by the middle of the fourth month. It's not even reached there. Then design cover page, that's not been even started off. And when we are reporting date, this when we are having a review, there are activities which are not even finished or not even started yet. This one, maybe good 30-35% still to be done. Of course, we are waiting for these things to happen before this is done, and before this has to finish before this gets done. So the Gantt chart is a beautiful way of looking at activities, the time required for each of those activities. What are the goals in terms of time? And also it has a clear dashboard which shows how much of those activities have been accomplished. And if you need to focus on certain activities, it'll tell you, please focus on this activity. You have to get this going and make sure we start finishing this so that this can be also done and that we do not have a delay in the entire project itself. So Gantt chart is that. Another way of looking at the operations and how activities are done is by looking at individuals. Like the same thing, the same example of creating, making a book, putting a book together, copy, edit, manuscript, design sample pages, draw artwork, review the book first pages, creating final pages, designing the cover of the book itself. The same example is taken here. So there is work going on. Carrie is doing some work, and during this particular part, Carrie doesn't have any much work to do. During the 6th month, Carrie has time. Chris is occupied for the next 6 months. Apparently, Chris's work is all set. Chris is pretty busy. So for the next 6 months, there's no free time for Chris. For work, whatever work we have scheduled for Mark, it's the first 3.5 months, there is no work scheduled for Mark. And the next 2.5 months, there is work. Tim is scheduled for the next 6 months. Natalie is again sporadic. There is free time here, there's free time here, there's free time here. So Jen, again, there's free time in the 3rd month, little in the 5th month. Otherwise, Jen is pretty busy. So if we have another project, we exactly will not burden Chris. We will not go back to Tim. We will focus on using Mark, Carrie, Natalie, and maybe Jen in ways that we can get the second project started. We cannot go back and burden Chris and Tim, because if we did that, the second project will be delayed inordinately. Well, for sure, we know will not be completing the second project on time because they already have their schedules full. So you can look at these load charts. They're called load charts because you don't want to load a few people and other people are doing nothing. So these are all part of operations management. You can look at activities, how activities are supposed to be achieved, the goals, and what is the actual progress. If you're using Gantt charts, you cannot look at individuals and see how their schedules are, and who is scheduled for an entire period, who are fully loaded and who are partially loaded, who are underloaded. And if you're taking up a second project, you exactly know which individual employees should we be focusing on for taking up the second project. This is how you maintain a tab and control. Few things that we discussed in terms of maintaining control on our operations. So we're done with this chapter. So I can stop sharing here. If you have